several friends know that I'm an RFK supporter, and now the news just came out that he is endorsing Donald Trump. So yeah, this has been a whole roller coaster. I guess I'd like to. I'm probably going to be asked multiple times, so I just thought I'd throw it out there, and along with other disappointed RFK supporters or not disappointed RFK supporters. I don't even know how I came across his stuff. Probably just an ad on social media, and I liked that he was talking kind of third party, that it wasn't, there was, I guess, just another choice, and almost like, I don't want to say more qualified choice, but somewhat more qualified choice. And also, he was talking a lot about issues. A lot of times the current nominees or candidates just start trashing the other person. And so that is very annoying to me, and that's kind of how I felt with the debate, that's all it turned into, and I can do it better, or this guy's doing it worse, but now how am I going to do it better? And a lot of times, even from people, it just seems like a lot of regurgitated information. Like, people are just saying what you hear in the headlines, what you hear the candidates say. It wasn't you weren't coming to these conclusions on your own. And so that's one of the reasons I gravitated towards him. I think it's just being two-sided, being very black and white. I think there's a lot of nuance to a lot of issues, and I don't think people are noticing it, or we're just so sucked into their world that it almost makes it become true. And I've heard other people talk about how they had to get off of social media. I think even before, in 2020, that's when I ended up getting off of Facebook, because it just became a dumpster fire then with COVID, and like just a bunch of arguing and no winning, and nobody changing any minds, and almost even worse, like just digging your heels in more to whatever you were already believing. So that's one of the reasons I gravitated towards him. It was truly independent. It almost seemed like he could check things off from both sides. It wasn't just, I'm a Democrat, I'm going to line up with all the things that Democrats are saying, or I'm a Republican, I'm going to line up with all the things the Republicans are saying. And so also, yeah, getting off social media, I feel like a lot of times they make our world sound so crazy. And yeah, maybe our world is a little bit crazy, but I don't think it's as crazy as they were making it sound. So he started talking about, like, I'm the candidate of hope. It's not fear. Like, if you vote for this guy, this is going to happen. If you vote for this one, this is going to happen. So it seemed like it wasn't voting out of fear, and I liked that message, whether it was plausible or not. I think at the time, even it didn't matter. Like, it was just, I guess I just resonated with the message more. And yeah, so that's when I started following along his campaign, and just slowly started learning about what he was about. And just as his campaign progressed, it kind of started showing like, hey, like we might actually have a path to the White House. And so it kind of just made me a believer too. And as it progresses, they keep hitting a few hurdles, which is normal. It's part of life or whatever. And just as it keeps going, sometimes it feels like these aren't just normal hurdles. They're kind of hurdles being put in the way to kind of exclude you. It's almost, for lack of a better term, it's almost very Mean Girls. Like, it's like, oh, you're not invited to the party. So it kind of gives you that also false hope that, like, oh, if you do this, then maybe you can come. And so he does it, and then it's still like, oh, well, I meant it like this or whatever. And so it just kind of keeps building up that way. And them, I guess, talking about this is a democracy and being able to participate equally with the rest of the candidates. That's not the feeling this whole campaign was getting from the process. So it and there was a lot of stuff that, like, I guess it's when you follow something along and you feel like you know it a little more. Maybe I'm getting a little bit of false sense of knowing the campaign, just like when you think you may know someone and you start hearing, I guess, bad things about them or things they've done in the past, and you kind of don't believe it because they've shown you something different. So you start questioning, like, is this actually kind of crazy, or are these people misinterpreting it? And so there starts being things that, like, I see full interviews and see him talk about things, and you kind of start building this persona in your head, like, oh, like, this is kind of the way he talks and thinks, and this is his mentalities. And then you do see these mainstream media things trying to discredit him on just like some wacky title. It's like, what? Like, and I can see how it can be taken out of context, but also I guess that's how we are now. It's like sometimes even I'm guilty of it. I'll just read the headline and then, like, oh, I saw a headline that said this and I didn't read the article. And so our brain looks for a little quick, easy, I don't know, cheat sheets that, like, oh, this is what this guy thinks about this, and I just kind of keep it in the back of my mind, and that's how this guy's going to be, just for future reference. And yeah, sometimes just taking things out of context is just kind of crazy. Anyways, even before I started gravitating entirely to RFK, I kind of started thinking, like, I remember back in, was it 2020 or 2016? It was I'm pretty sure it was 2016, when the Democrats had, like, I want to say, like, 15 people trying to run for, oh, maybe it was 2020. I don't remember. Right, no, because 2016 was when it was Hillary. So it was for 2020 when Biden got the nomination. And there was like 16 people running, and it was almost a year ahead. I think it was in 2019 that started happening, that they were all on stage and debating each other and so on. And I remember it being a year ahead, like, wow, like, they're kind of getting ahead of this or whatnot. And so I was expecting that last year in 2023, when I was expecting primaries and see who else is going to run for Republicans or who else is going to run for Democrats. And then kind of as it gets closer, it doesn't seem like it's going to happen, like anything's happening. And so right now, part of the argument is that that the Democrats are the ones disrupting democracy because Kamala Harris wasn't chosen. There was no primaries. And I get that, like, she wasn't chosen. I mean, she wasn't elected as, like, by the people. She wasn't chosen by the people. She wasn't elected by the people. She was chosen by Joe Biden as a running mate. And even now, as Biden drops out, I don't know if that's the typical process, like, that would happen, and just have him pass it on to her. But kind of the same thing, like, mostly Republicans are kind of mentioning this to kind of make the Republican Party look a little more credible. But I feel like it was the same thing. Like, there were a few other Republican candidates, but I don't know if they ran through the same primary process, and if Trump really did become the nominee through a primary process. And yeah, there might be some, what do you call it? Like, kind of paying respects to the incumbent, the one that is in office, that kind of goes unchallenged. But that's part of why I have issues with like tradition and stuff, because sometimes it can seem so illogical. But either way, Kamala wasn't elected. She was just passed on. And the way I always try to think, seeing things from both sides, is we try to accept it when it's the Democrat side, and then once, let's say Trump was a vice president, and somebody passed it on to him, then people would have been all upset about it. And so that's part of the thing with fairness. It can't be the same way for when it benefits you, and then not call it out when it doesn't benefit you. So, and then seeing so that's part of one thing. That's one of the reasons it started leaving a bad taste in my mouth with Democrats. Like, okay, so we didn't choose her, but this is the person you guys have chosen. I guess we'll just have to take your word for it. And kind of the same thing with the Republican side. Like I said, I don't know if anything did happen, but I definitely wasn't made aware of it. And I start hearing, well, like I said, I started seeing the headlines, and the one that I thought was fascinating too was John Oliver. I'm a big John Oliver fan. I think his show is funny and it's entertaining and whatever. And I think a week ago or 2 weeks ago, he had RFK, and even I was excited, and I told my wife, like, oh, they're doing a thing on RFK on John Oliver. And I asked her, like, do you think he's going to be painted in a good light or a bad light? And she's like, I think it'll be good. And I was like, nah. Like, I guess now, based on what I'm starting to see from this picture, like, it's I think it's going to be a bad light. And yeah, sure enough, it starts pretty good. And even I thought RFK had a good sense of humor about it, because at one point John Oliver's talking about all this stuff and says, like, and if I were to end this right here, this would be a good campaign ad for him. And so he ends up using all that and cuts off right there. And then it's like, vote RFK for president or whatever. I thought that was funny, but a lot of the stuff they chose seems like it was taken out of context and I guess not giving you the full story. And I've made a few other videos on kind of thinking critically and is this objective, or is this objective information, or what's going on? And I think one thing that I started to notice is, as objective as you may think the information is, whether it's right wing or left wing or whatever, if you're always picking the same side, then that doesn't, I don't know, like, you're obviously rooting for a team. You're not rooting for an objective truth or reality. Like, you're just putting a spin on it to make it look a certain way. And I've started to notice that more. And there was times, even during Trump's presidency, where we'd talk about the fake news and the media and taking it out of context. And I did see it a few times on his part, and I did think it was unfair. But honestly, for a lot of the times that I would see Donald Trump stuff, it was his own doing. Like, you can see the full interview, you can see him either lose his cool or think he's being treated unfairly when it's like an honest question. And so take that as anyone will. But pretty much, as the campaign goes on, the Democratic side definitely seems to be putting more obstacles on RFK's side than the Republican side. And so that's leaving a bad taste in my mouth too. And when Nicole Shanahan came out on that podcast that she first mentions about endorsing Trump, she did say, like, if we're splitting hairs, so it's almost like she doesn't want to do it, but if I had to pick a side, this is the side. And she for sure seemed very annoyed by all the obstacles that have been placed by the Democratic side. And also to mention that these things have happened before. They happened with Ross Perot, and they've happened with Ralph Nader. And so it's just there's a pattern now. It's not just a one-time thing. There's a pattern of disruption, and both times with Perot and Nader have mentioned the Democratic side being the ones that are putting these obstacles. So like I said, again, this is definitely leaving a bad taste in my mouth. And it's definitely trying to separate the people involved in the Democratic side versus the system of the Democratic side, if that makes any sense. So, like, as a person with Harris, she seems like a nice lady, and I think they've made good points. I see memes in the rhetoric that, like, a lot of previous people from the Democratic side showed up to the DNC, and on the RNC there was a lot of people that have worked with Trump before that didn't show up, the people that have not endorsed him, people that wouldn't want to work with him again, and so on, that have kind of thrown him under the bus. And yeah, I think that says something too. And with the Democrats, yeah, I think there is a better unity within as people that, like, we want to get this done together. But I think the machine as the system is what's kind of throwing it. And I guess either it's one of those you can't see the forest for the trees, like they're too close and they don't see it, or they're ignoring it, or they know and they're just going along with it. I don't know what it is, but I think there's slightly better intentions on the Democratic side, but as the system, I think it is there's something going on. And so I already listened to most of RFK's address to the nation today about endorsing Trump, and he mentioned a lot of this stuff too. And one of the bigger ones that stuck out was that there was that phone call. I don't know if how closely you guys follow, but apparently Trump, after the assassination attempt, had talked to him, and well, I don't know. They just talked about issues in the country and whatever, and he apparently said that he tried to reach to Harris's side, and they didn't want to talk to him. So that was part of his point with all of this, is that they're at least willing to listen to the topics and the issues, and see how they can work together to fix it. They mentioned something about a unity party, that this is more outside of our ego, and that's, I guess, what I did like about it. That's what I like, that he thinks outside of that. It's not about him. It's not about him winning it's not an ego thing. Like he said, like, I can't keep dragging along my volunteers and have them take time away from their families and ask you guys for more money if I really don't see a path to the White House. And he says, I wouldn't have gotten in if I didn't think I had a chance to win. He's like, had I been able to debate and had a fair shot like everyone else, I really think I could have done better, had a better polling numbers. But since he was excluded, I didn't get the representation that I thought I could get out of the system. And so, to not drag anyone along, he didn't want to play spoiler, and so he has dropped out. And he has dropped out, well, he's suspended, he had said, because he's not dropped out entirely. He's dropped out of swing states, and that's where he says he's endorsing Trump, so that you can vote, well, so that mostly, so he's not a spoiler in those states. If it's usually a typical blue or red state, he says he's probably not going to have much of a difference there, so he's staying in those states. And in swing states, he's endorsing Trump, asking his supporters to follow Trump. He doesn't like a lot of the foreign policies with Democrats, some of the censorship, and I guess, I don't know. There was more other stuff, but those are the only ones I remember. So, I guess here we are. And if any of you are wondering if I'm going to, how I'm going to vote, I will not be voting for Trump. I can't yet. I just have too much of a bad taste in my mouth from the previous one. However, part of the more recent Trump things I've seen and heard seem like he's a little bit different from the last time. And this is even like post debate. Like the debate still seemed his typical self. I don't know if my algorithms are showing me different stuff, but it always seems like there's I'm a big fan of the never say never, because you always think, oh, I'm never going to do that until you're faced with that situation. And I think that was the situation with RFK. I think a year ago he wouldn't have thought he had this speech today where he's gonna endorse Donald Trump. And so it's one of those never say never things. And so we're all faced with things that we didn't think we would want to do. Like I said, I'm in Texas. I think this is a pretty red state. I don't think his name is going to be off here, so I'll probably still vote for him. And I can't participate in the two-party thing anymore. That's just one of the things I feel like I've learned as growing up, is not enabling behaviors. And I think continuing to vote blue or red is just enabling a behavior. And I know I mentioned this to a few people, and they're like, well, like kind of the whole throwing your vote away. And I kind of think if you really think your vote matters as much as it does, it shouldn't matter if you're going blue, red, or independent. If you really think it counts, then make it count. And if you really, and I don't even mean like to not, if you really believe in Republicans, you really believe in Democrats, then cool, vote for them. But if those that say that we need a better option than the two-party system, then kind of that's what voting is for. Like show your belief in the voting system. But if you're really are voting red or blue because you think those are the only ones, the two that matter, we're just feeding into the system. And so then does our vote really matter if it's only going to be blue or red? You vote independent, but it's still going to be counted as blue or red, or anti-blue or anti-red. If that's to me, I guess that would feel like my vote doesn't matter if it really just go to blue or red, or not blue or not red. But anyways, it was a good Friday aside from that. I'm curious as to how all this will turn out, and I hope we can all just accept the results and can disagree. I don't know, not even politely disagree, or like at least accept the disagreement. It doesn't have to go past that. But I don't know. We'll see. But I'm out of words and I'm just rambling on now. So I'll leave you guys with that. All right. Bye.